Welcome back, everybody, to our epic 50-hour online vigil in solidarity with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. This is my last hour with you for a little while, and soon you will... Oh, I'm being told you can't hear my audio. Hold on 1 second. Oh, you can hear my audio. Okay, great. Cool. This is my last hour here before Elizabeth Lee Voss will come on to do the next 6 interviews, and bear with me 1 second. Well, I just sneeze from the powder that I've just plastered all over my face to try and be less shiny for you guys. Okay, so I am very pleased to be here with the one and the only CommanderX. CommanderX is a hacker, a freedom fighter, a well-known, renowned anon. He's also a long-time friend of Julian Assange. Welcome to the stream, CommanderX.
Thank you for having me, Susie. It's a pleasure and a great honor to be able to help this vigil out and to help Julian.
It is so cool to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've just, it's really important, we've been discussing that it's really important to humanize Julian and to help people to learn a bit more about the real Julian, not the Julian that's been depicted by the mainstream media and by various moneyed interests. So I was hoping that you could help to do that by talking to us about Julian the man as you know him. What is Julian really like, and how does the real Julian differ from the depictions of him?
Right. Well, I don't want to go against anybody. Like I saw Christine Assange tweeting the other day, insisting, Julian's a journalist and he's not a hacker. I'm sorry, but for me, Julian will always be a hacker. I mean, I first ran across Julian and began interacting with him in the 80s. On a bulletin board out of Germany. And back then, of course, we didn't know he was Julian Assange. He was Mendax. He was, wow. I mean, for those of us who were hacking in those very early days, he was, well, I'll flat out say it, the greatest hacker that anybody knew of, really. I mean, I guess everybody had their own opinions back then, but I certainly thought he was the greatest hacker. I remember in particular, for me, what was impressive is that the sort of myth was circulating in the hacker underground that Julian had hacked into satellites in space and had made them move around. And as a young hacker myself, just plugging in a little 9 kilobaud per second modem, and the idea that I could get on my my little computer at the time, which was probably about as powerful as your wristwatch is now, and make satellites move in space, that really inspired me. I mean, that really and I think it inspired a lot of people to continue hacking. And so for me, I see. Yes, I get that Julian's a journalist. I get that he's a publisher. But on a personal level, if you're asking my personal view of him as a person, I always see him, and even today in times when he was still connected and we were interacting for business of WikiLeaks, I still see him as just a fellow hacker. And I think, I'd like to think he sort of felt the same way about me, because there's a certain level of honesty that you can have in a relationship between hackers that necessarily maybe you can't have in other different kinds of relationships. So I felt like our relationship in the current times, contemporary times, was very honest, very open. We felt we could speak freely with each other, and I think that's because, like I said, I'm not denying he's all those other things, but to me, I think I will always see him as that first, as a hacker, and people need to understand what I mean by that, because for me, hacking is a very inclusive concept. It's not an exclusive concept. To me, hacking is about taking systems that you see are not functioning the way you think they should function, and making them function the way you want them to function, even if you have to break them to do it. And so that's sort of the primal principle to me of hacking. And so in a way, what Julian is doing, in my mind, in my eyes, is hacking society. He's hacking governments. He's hacking history by deconstructing it with this concept of disclosure, this concept of transparency. And it's had this huge effect that you spent so much time talking about. To me, I see that as the effect of one of the greatest hacks in history. I see WikiLeaks itself as one of the greatest hacks in history. And like all the good hacks, it should be simple. You know, the idea behind WikiLeaks is very simple, really. It's a huge innovation, but it's basically a very simple concept. And so for me, Julian, on that kind of level, as a man, I see him as a fellow hacker, and I think I'll always see him that way. And I mean that in the most positive way possible, because I think hackers are pretty cool. So.
Well, some hackers save lives, and Julian has certainly saved a number of lives of at-risk journalists and whistleblowers. Can you give us any insight into that? What is it about him? I mean, like, think about it, like black hat hackers. They could just hack for make millions of dollars. They could, you know,
No.
benefits, but
people who hack to take money are criminals, and they're using technology to commit a crime. That's not hacking. Hacking, first of all, is a burning curiosity. That is one sort of core principle about it, is this burning curiosity about how things work, whether it be an electronic network, computers, or society itself. In Julian's latest case of WikiLeaks, it's about how information works, how information flows. And so hacking, first of all, is a burning curiosity, and then it is a steadfast resolve not to accept systems that you see as not functioning properly, not functioning for the greater good. And then thirdly, it's not necessarily about technical skill. Hacking is more about persistence. It's a stubbornness to find that way, no matter what it takes, to find a way to deconstruct that process and reconstruct it in a way that you feel is positive. And those are really the three core principles of hacking. Anybody who goes out to hurt somebody, to steal money, to do anything like that, they're not a hacker, they're a criminal using technology. To me, hacking is always a positive thing. It's because it's based on those three principles. And I know for a fact that Julian feels exactly the same about hacking. And I think in his mind to this day, he would be offended if somebody were to try to say he weren't a hacker. Because again, we see it based on those three principles, and we see it in a very positive light.
that's a pretty brilliant explanation. But I'm still trying to look for where is the person, the real Julian, as opposed to the depictions of him in, you know.
Well, I think I just summed it up in the principles. It's a burning curiosity about the world around us. I think, you know, both myself and Julian share that in common. Again, the idea to not accept the systems around us the way they are, and then a persistence, you know, a stubbornness to find a way, no matter what it takes, to remedy those systems, to correct those systems. And I don't think Julian is done yet. I think that WikiLeaks is a brilliant concept. And I think that, you know, he's going to have a lot of work to do when he gets out of the embassy to sort of polish up the organization and get it back on its feet and running strong again, like it is when he's at the head of it. But I don't think he's done yet. I think if you imagine, and you, Susie, have expressed how impressed you are with the concept of WikiLeaks, and it is an impressive innovation. Imagine what might come next from a mind like Julian. Imagine what he might do next. That's what I tell people is, you know, what if WikiLeaks is just one thing that he's going to do? You know, every hacker in the world has a desire to compete, not only with other hackers, but with yourself. And you always want to do something better. No matter how great the last hack you did was, you always want a better one. You always want to, it's just, there's a little bit of glory seeking, I think, in every hacker, in that sense, just that sense that, you know, you want to outdo yourself. And so I think, you know, Julian is not done, and I don't have any clues to that. I'm not trying to leak any information I'm privy to. I just think that Julian is by all accounts a young man. At least I would like to think so. I don't want to think of either one of us as old yet. And I think that we both have a lot to give. And I think Julian is just, the thing that is impressive about Julian is his genius. Genius is impressive to me. It will always be impressive to me. And I've had the great privilege in my life to run across and call friend a number of geniuses. And Julian is foremost among those. And so I think that for me, I look even beyond WikiLeaks and what he might do next. And again, in his mind, I believe he will see whatever he does next as a hack of society, as a hack of this world, a hack of history. It's all a hack. It doesn't have to be all about computers. It can just be about any system that's not functioning properly. And I think if we look around us, we see so many systems that clearly are not functioning properly, clearly not functioning for the greater good. So there's just so much, as we say in the hacking world, it's a very target-rich surface right now. There's a lot of different things that could be latched onto and changed for the greater good. And I'm really waiting for what comes next. That's what really excites me about Julian Assange, is to see, what he will do next. And I think it's going to be even more astounding than WikiLeaks. And so I challenge people to wrap your mind around that, because most of the people who are watching and yourself and a lot of people are very obviously very, very impressed with WikiLeaks. But imagine if he could do something even more astounding than WikiLeaks. I think he's a breathtaking man in that sense, where his genius is just unparalleled. And genius doesn't want to quit. Genius doesn't want to rest on its haunches. And so I think that's what's so critical about trying to get him out of there and preserve his life and preserve his freedom. It's not just the work that he's going to continue to do on WikiLeaks, but it's the next thing. It's the next big thing that he is capable of, that is really almost impossible to wrap my mind around, but it will blow us all away. And so we really need to rally to save this man, because in a way, it would be like saving Einstein or saving, Van Gogh or any of those incredible mad geniuses. And that's how I see Julian. This incredible, mad genius hacker who has, from the very beginning, I mean, he registered leaks.org in 1999. So the concept of WikiLeaks really is something that's been around for quite some time. And, that shows an unprecedented level of innovation and really a prophetic view of the world, to realize that this was going to become an essential thing, that information, especially the idea of procuring hitherto secret information and releasing that to the public, and not just releasing it, but putting it on the internet in such a way that it can never disappear. And so, that's it's quite astounding. And I encourage people to think about what Julian could do next when you support him, and think about how important that is, because this is a man who's, and I don't give out compliments easy. I'm not a person to run around just randomly praising people. And this is a man whose genius is second to none, and probably I'd have to say the smartest man I've ever known personally. And so we need to save that mind. It's that mind that concerns me. We need to preserve that and free that mind.
So your explanation around the thirst to fix broken systems or to make them work better than they did before, what I was looking for is like the humanity, a description of the humanity in Julian, but taking your example of broken systems or systems that could be bettered. When we live in a system that produces death and destruction, then to better that system or to remedy that system, to either repair or to upgrade that system, is to counter. Well, I think counter it, right? To preserve life.
Julian's
in a system of death.
On a human level, again, Julian is a very curious man. He's a very persistent man. He will not, when he sets his mind to something he's not going to give up. And that is one of the penultimate qualities of any, again, going back to it, any good hacker. He's a very compassionate man. He's the only friend I have in information activism who's really, really famous. Like, I mean, you know, I associate with a number of people. I associate with Dale Coleman. I associate with Glenn Greenwald. I consider them friends. I communicate with them on a regular basis, but never once has any of those people reached out to find out if I'm okay. Never once has any of those people sent me a DM to say, hey, how are you doing? So, you know, Julian is a very compassionate man. He's thoughtful of other people. You know, he definitely is not aloof in any way, shape, or form. I mean, he has to protect himself in a general sort of way, being a person of fame. Any of us who have any little bit of fame to us have to protect ourselves. But once he's your friend, he's approachable. He's never, for instance, refused, you know, to communicate with me or delayed in an undue way to communicate with me. So he's attentive to his relationships around him. I think he's a very sensitive man. Quite sensitive, I would have to say. I think that, you know, he is so cool as a cucumber in public with all of the hate and everything rolling off of his back, but it really does affect him. I think he feels it, and it does affect him. His outward persona is one of indifference to it, but he does, you know, he feels both ends of it. He feels the support and the love, and that buoys him, but he also feels the hatred and feels the smears and everything, and they do wound him. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I could go on and talk. You know, any human being who's a friend of yours, you could go on forever and talk. Everybody's got such depths to them, and Julian is one. You know, obviously a man of great depth. I think he's very passionate. One of the things I've always loved about Julian is that he shares a deep passion. I know one thing that is particularly big with Julian, and a particular big point is loyalty. I think one of the things I'd like to think that he values in our friendship, my personal friendship with him, is the undying loyalty that I've shown him over the years, and that will continue. It is literally unshakable. I would take a bullet for Julian, and I think he knows that, and I think he appreciates that, because there are so few people in his life, besides obviously his mom and maybe a handful of other individuals, who have shown that kind of unshakable loyalty. And in this business especially, that is a huge rarity. That's an awesome treasure, a gift to hold on to. So I don't know. I hope I've answered the question. Again, I could go on all day. I mean, he's just a man of such depth and genius that talking about the human side of him is.
I think your insight is incredibly unique, and I think I have the gut feeling that a lot of people will be really, really fascinated right now. One of the things I love about these vigils is that no matter how many guests we bring on, we always get something different out of each of them, a slightly different perspective, different experience, different realm of expertise, and different impressions of Julian and WikiLeaks, or a different direct experience of Julian and WikiLeaks. So I thank you for that, because I think this is a very unique insights that you're giving. What I was trying to get to is and maybe we'll never get there, but what I was trying to get to is what drives him to protect other people? What drives him to save whistleblowers, at-risk journalists, you know, to put his neck on the line to save other people? And that's where I'm going with the compassion aspect. Because
I've never spoken with Julian on those topics, but I know a lot about Julian, and just from my interactions with him, combined with my knowledge of his personal history, I would have to say that this goes all the way back to his childhood. I encourage the listeners out there and the viewers out there to procure for yourself the movie Underground, the Julian Assange story, which in my mind is probably one of the sort of greatest peaks that you can have into the humanity of Julian Assange. I think one of it's again probably something that we sort of share in common too, and we both had really rough childhoods. Julian had a very rough childhood. It was not easy for him growing up. I mean, his mom did the best she could, okay, but circumstances were what they were. Watch the movie. I won't spoil it for you. I will tell you this: they nailed Christine Assange. I mean, because she's also a friend of mine, and a very close personal friend. And the actress and the writers in that movie, they nailed Christine. That could be. I mean, honest to God, it was astounding how well they nailed Christine. But I think just again, you'd have to almost watch the movie to understand. But he had a very rough childhood, and what happens with people who have a very tough childhood is it can go either way with you. You can become, a complete asshole and become very cynical and very mean spirited and take it out on the world that way, or you sort of snap like a rubber band and you say to yourself, you know what? The whole world treated me like shit the whole time I was a child. So I'm going to go out and help people who don't have a voice. I'm going to go out because nobody was there for me. Nobody was there to help me when I had no voice, when I had no power. And so I'm going to go out and make a difference in the world and help people because I'm driven to do the same thing. And so that it's just a guess. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know what to say, but I do know his background, and I do know he's a very compassionate man. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, that doesn't even take being a friend of Julian Assange to know that he cares about the world, that he cares about people, that he's doing what he's doing out of compassion. And I think more than anything, for the voiceless, for the weak, I don't think Julian gives much of a rat's ass about powerful and the people that are doing okay, to be honest with you. I think he really, really cares about people who are, for instance, getting killed for no reason at all because these powerful governments want to just do whatever the fuck they want to do, and they just run roughshod over everybody. I think those matter to him, and I think the weak and the voiceless matter to Julian. I hate to play shrink with somebody, but I think it's. I'll just put it on myself. For me, it comes from my childhood, and I know that Julian also had a very rough childhood. And so it's just my guess that it began very early on, again, with that sort of dichotomy where when you do have a rough childhood, you've got two ways you can go with that. And one of those ways is to fight back against that cruelty of the world and try to make a difference, try to stand up. It's sort of like if you get picked on, like when you're in school a lot by bullies, you can go one of two ways. You can either become a bully or you can become the guy that goes and beats the fuck out of bullies. And I think that's the simplest way I could put it. Julian decided to become one of those dudes that goes out and beats the fuck out of bullies. And that comes from a compassion for who the bullies are picking on. So I hope I nailed it this time.
Well, as he famously said, he enjoys crushing bastards.
Exactly. And that's not just the thrill of crushing bastards, although I have to admit there is a thrill to it. It's what I do for a living as well. And, there is a thrill to kicking assholes in the teeth. And I think that Julian would acknowledge that. But I also think that underneath that, with the real guiding force, the driving force beneath that is I just hate to see people victimized. I think Julian just hates to see people placed in a position of having no power and no voice and no hope. And I think one of the things that Julian really struggles to do is to try to give people hope. Again, I hope I nailed it for you.
You say struggles to give people hope. Do you mean because he sees so deeply into these systems that he understands exactly how corrupt and broken they are?
I don't know if it's that complicated. I don't know. My feeling is it's just simple compassion. I mean, compassion is what compassion is. I mean, it's empathy. Compassion, deep compassion is always deepest when it comes from a point of empathy. And empathy is always very, very easy for somebody who themselves has been a victim who themselves have had their voice stripped from them and their power stripped from them. And like I said, it really goes back to Julian had a really terrible childhood. It's that simple, and that's not a matter of private information. That's public. Watch the movie, and it's horrifying what Julian went through in his childhood. And as a victim of a very abusive childhood myself, I understand the feeling, and I think it's easy to have empathy for the voiceless and the weak of the world when your initial experience as a child, when your first impression of the fucking world is yourself being victimized and being, having your power stripped from you. So it's a theory I've shared a lot in a lot of interviews, that I think that a lot of people who are sort of crypto anarchists and people who are so driven to fight evil in this world and to stand up for the voiceless and the powerless of the world, I think it's something that you'll find a lot of us share in common, is a really shitty childhood. And it really sort of bubbles up from that. And again, you can go either way with that, because a lot of people have shitty childhoods and become complete assholes. And then others of us sort of swing the other way and say, no, fuck that. I'm going to, now that I've got power, you know what I mean? Now I've got power. So fuck you. Here I come. You know what I mean? And so, again, I don't want to head shrink Julian, but I feel that would be a very likely answer to why he is such a compassionate man, because it's obvious that he's compassionate. As to the why, that's my best guess. As somebody who suffered a very similar childhood, and I had a very similar reaction to it. There's a lot of parallels. I really I have a deep understanding of Julian. I think that's why we're such close friends, because that also led to isolation. Having a bad childhood leads to isolation, which in turn led to a fascination with technology, which in turn led to hacking. So do you see where I'm going with this? It's like there's a lot of hackers really grew out of a shitty childhood that in turn isolated them. They became lonely. They became interested in technology. They had a lot of time on their hands, because none of us really had much of a social life as a child, as a teenager. Excuse me. And so, we were very isolated socially. So we had a lot of time on our hands. Hacking takes a lot of time. Figuring out technology, it takes a lot of time. You spend a lot of time alone, and you want to be alone. You're good with that. I think that that is a parallel that in as far as hackers go, I think you will find there is a strain of us. There is a certain strain of us hackers that share that similar sort of trajectory from our childhood into the adult world. And so I think my insight is somewhat accurate to say that, it really comes from, it begins at a very early age, and it begins with a simple choice. How do I want to deal with my own situation? How do I want to take that energy that has been projected on me, and how do I want to build my life going forward with that? And it's a very sort of binary choice. You can go out and be very angry. And you know what? I'm not going to gainsay anybody who makes that choice, because if you had it really, really rough, like some of us had it, being angry is a perfectly valid friggin' reaction to, a shitty fucking childhood. So it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just that it's a choice. And then others choose something more constructive, like Julian did, to stand up and say, no, I'm gonna find other people, I'm gonna help other people who were in that situation. And the empathy is really easy then. It's really easy to be empathetic and compassionate at that point, because the feeling, viscerally the feeling of being powerless and being voiceless.
That is epic. That is an epic description and epic insight. What do you think about the Unity for J movement in terms of Julian's current predicament?
It's fucking epic. Okay, this is perhaps one of the most historic mass movements that's ever been built, on so many different levels. First of all, strictly from the sort of how do I want to say, the topical sort of technological innovative level of having created such a powerful movement with so many moving parts and all of these components meshing together. As an activist myself, I'm a little bit jealous, to be honest with you. I'm in awe of it. I really am. And I think that for years to come after this movement is successful, and it will be successful, I think people will be studying and deconstructing how yourself and the others around you built this, so that this kind of success can be replicated in the future. So on a topical level, it is just astounding. As a fellow activist who tries to build movements, it is impressive, incredibly impressive. I'd have to say, so far in my career, the most impressive I've ever seen. And I've seen some pretty impressive stuff. I mean, I've done some stuff in Anonymous that was pretty impressive in and of itself. I was part of things in Anonymous that were pretty impressive, but I don't think I've seen anything quite this astounding. So on that level,
are you saying that because of the size, the speed, the scale? Like what is it?
All of that, all of that. I mean, just the speed with which it has exploded, but also the way it is not shimmied off the rails. It's very, I've seen a lot of things blow up big in my career, 10 years that I've spent in Anonymous. I've seen things get big. So it's not just big, it's working, and it's staying in its track. It's staying on track. And I have found that in activism, that is incredibly difficult to do. It's easy, well, it's easier. I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier to get lots of people interested in something, anything, okay? And I think you know that yourself, Susie. You've seen Anonymous do, especially in the early days, 11, 12, 13. We did some pretty astounding work with the Arab Spring, working with Occupy. Even as late as 2014 with Operation Ferguson, we saw some things that, we were able to make big things happen and get lots of people involved. So it's not just the size, but it's the ability to keep that movement on track. And I think one of the elements that has helped that is, number one, the idea of inclusiveness. To check your religion and your politics at the door, and roll up your sleeves and pay attention to this one thing. So I think that has had a great deal to do with the stability. Stability, I think, is key. And I see Unity for Jay. I've been watching it very closely. I'm looking at it from all different levels. I'm looking at it again as a fellow activist interested in the mechanics of this.
And from inside it, because you've been contributing significantly. You are a mod on the server.
Thank you. I've been doing my best. I'd like to think so. I hope. I really I feel blessed when I go in that Discord server and people greet me, and I feel wanted and needed. It makes
someone
me feel
said to me, I'm just going to tell you this because I might not get a chance. Someone said to me, "Is that the real CommanderX?" And I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "And he's here, and we could talk to him and work with him." I'm like, "Yeah, welcome to the server, man."
Well, God bless people who think that way about me. But you know what? As far as I'm concerned, me, you, Elizabeth, we're all just activists working together. I'm when I go into that Discord server, I'm no kind of fucking legend or hero. I'm just hell, I do the friggin' podcast. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's, there's nothing particularly legendary or heroic about it. What I know how to do. I think
what it is, though, is the accessibility, because what we're doing is we're making ourselves really accessible. You said before, like, when you have any measure of fame or celebrity, that you have to protect yourself. And so the tendency is to, like, build those walls around you and have those concentric rings of the people who are closer to you. And then,
but in the Discord server, I don't have to do that because
exactly
of your job that you did. Because what you've done by setting that up in such a way is I don't feel naked there. And like I do say in an IRC channel or something like that, where I feel like, okay, I got to put the wall up, you know what I mean? I've got to kind of, hold back and stand back and brace myself. I don't get that feeling at all. In fact, it's like a breath of fresh air when I walk in the door, because now I can just be me. I can just, I can just roll up my sleeves and do some work. And I think that that's part of the stability thing, again, of how you set that server up, how you regulate it, how you have the mods are wonderful. First of all, you've got a wonderful, wonderful set of mods. We're working very hard. So I feel like I'm protected by the system that's been set up there. And so I don't feel the need to throw the shields up and
yet the system itself is fundamentally insecure. I mean, it's Discord at the end of the day, right?
Well, you don't need.
It's not end-to-end encrypted. I'm not criticizing it. What I'm trying to say.
No. I'm going to explain for you though, because I'll help you out here. I'll help you out here as an anon. I'll help you out because if people out there are concerned about that, this isn't necessary here. You're not trying everything in its time and place. I have done work with Animal Liberation Front. I've done work with Earth Liberation Front. Yes, we burned shit. Okay, and if you're out there setting, and I'm not ashamed. I don't care whether you agree with it or not. I went out and committed arsons. Okay, for the environment. And when you're doing shit like that, okay, yeah, you need so much security that you can't get enough security. Okay, this is not that kind of movement. We're trying to free a man. We're trying to put people in the streets. We're trying to. I think that's the most important part. Really, actually, and we can talk about that in a minute. We're trying to put people in the streets. First and foremost, all of this online work, this vigil, everything, it's got to end up with boots on the ground. One of the things I've learned throughout all of my life of cyber activism is that yes, cyber activism is a miracle. It has changed the landscape of activism. But if it doesn't end up generating boots on the ground, you're just pissing in the wind. But I forget where I was going with it now. But
well, I'm surprised to hear you speak about it as being, this like earth-shattering, situation-changing thing, or that as you said, it's like one of the most powerful movements, or whatever that you've seen. Because I don't view it that way. I view it as an embryo, and I see this as a very long-term struggle and a long-term goal. I also see how it can.
I'll say that it could be. I'll say that it could be. It's got that power to it. It's got that stability. But I'm hoping you're wrong. I'm hoping that victory is right around the fucking corner.
It may be.
If you want to ask me why I'm hopeful, I'll tell you the details of why I'm hopeful. But I really feel like I hope we don't have to go the Mandela route. I was involved with the apartheid movement for 5 years. I do not want to see Julian in that embassy for another 5 fucking years, or I'll go and burn the fucking world to the ground. I mean, I agree with you. It's got that potential. And if we got to go that route, we can. This is definitely a movement that can handle it for the long haul. But I'm hoping that we don't have to go there. I really am. I'm hoping that victory is right around the corner. And this is why it's more critical than ever. I want to encourage people to press hard now. Now. We've got them. We've got them by the balls. This movement has terrified governments and terrified the people that are holding this man hostage. And we have a precious moment right now, a precious window of opportunity. All we have to do is give our all, give that one last little bit that, I'm going to be up, you're going to be up for 50 hours straight, okay? And I haven't already not slept for 24 hours because I had another project I had to do before this. So I've literally already got 24 hours no sleep. And I'm prepared to go the duration. I'm prepared to do the whole 50-hour vigil here at the station to make sure the streams stay up. Now is the time to give every last little bit. Now is the time to quit your fucking job. I'm serious. Quit your job and get your boots in the street or get your ass online, whatever it is you know how to do. We can win this, and we can win this now. It doesn't need to take 5 or 10 years. I agree with you, Susie. I'm not trying to say we couldn't go that distance, and we will if we have to. I'm just saying we got a precious opportunity right now. We got these cocksuckers on the ropes, man. We can do this. We can win this right now. But we've got to, everybody that's involved already and everybody who's out there listening who hasn't gotten involved, you need to go out there, not only get involved, but you need to tell 5 people. You need to convince 5 people. And that's how this works. You not only roll up your sleeves and get in that Discord server, and it is unityforj.com/Discord. Get involved, okay? Come see all this exciting shit. Come meet CommanderX and Susie Dawson. But also, you need to go out there and find 5 other people, and you all need to get your boots in the ground. We need to be in front of these Ecuadorian embassies. We need to be there at DC for the, I think it's August 4th or whatever, coming up in DC. You need to not just watch it on the live streams, you need to go. And that's how Occupy worked and how it exploded to this global movement. That's how in the Arab Spring, these poor, impoverished and disenfranchised people in the Middle East were able to bring down these intransient dictatorships that had been around forever. And yet they were able to bring them down in days. If we put the mustard on, we could have them out of there in a week. I am a firm believer of it. But we need thousands of people in the streets, and we can do that. I know we can, because I've seen it done in my own anonymous career. I've been a part of making that happen. I'm a part of making it happen again. But it requires people to have commitment. You gotta network. You gotta get in that Discord, find out what's going on, and become a part of it. And then you need to get 5 other people involved, whether it's your family, friends. Pull 5 other people in, and then you need to strap your boots on, grab your backpack, and get out there in the streets and make it happen. And if we did that, if we do that right now, then we don't have to form a 10-year Mandela movement to get this man free. Because I'll be honest with you, this movement may be able to survive 10 years, but Julian can't. I'm sorry, but I know for a fact he can't. He'll be dead in a year if we don't get him out of it. So you need to
I've talked about Mandela movement as in, being like 8 years of serious organizing and 15 before it. I don't see this as necessarily being 8 years at all, but in my experience with mass movements, it took about 8 months to get full penetration of the message to the point where the mainstream media was forced to cover it in such a way that it then spread, the information spread throughout the populace. Maybe this will happen faster because we're not starting from scratch, right? Like with TPPA, no way. Everyone was like, what the hell is the TPP? What does that even mean? People know who Julian Assange is. People know who WikiLeaks are. They know what their achievements are by and large. So we're not having to start from scratch. If we can, there's 2 sides to every coin. Like on one side, I think we need a lot more time before we can truly break through to mass media in the way that we need to get millions of people on the street and have the next Live Aid at Hyde Park in honor of Julian Assange. The other side of that coin is that I personally believe, and people are resistant, a lot of activists are resistant to chalking up successes, but I personally believe that I agree with you actually, that we have had an impact already. I think that all of the intelligence agencies and the US and UK and Ecuador are definitely looking at this and going, oh shit, because there hasn't been something like this before.
I'm a very smart man. I'm a very smart man, and I'm very good at gauging these sort of things. I'm telling you right now, we've already saved him. Okay, he would have been dragged out there last week if it weren't for Unity for Gay. It's that simple. He'd have been dragged out of there in chains last week. So we've already done it. We've already at least saved him once, and that's precious. And that's a testament to the impact of the Unity for Julian movement, that we had such an impact so fast that we stopped them in their tracks. And people need to understand movements can do that. I just want to use a quick example. We did an operation years ago in Anonymous against Israel, where we actually stopped the Israeli army from bombing Gaza because the damage that was done in that operation was so strong and so powerful that the Israeli government actually stopped bombing somebody. Imagine that information activism was able to stop a friggin' army. Okay, this trumps even kinetic force. Information activism, which is really what this is. Even Unity for Julian, it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of a global front of the idea of wielding information, of weaponizing information to affect change. And so we've already had an impact. I'm convinced they were going to haul him out last week, and we stopped that. Okay, we'll never be able to prove it, but I believe it, and I'm pretty good at this sort of thing. I mean, I've been around a while myself. So now we need the next level, and 8 months, okay, that's better than the 8 years of Mandela. But maybe it's because it's personal, because Julian's my friend and I know for a fact he's fucking dying. Okay, so maybe it's personal, but I even 8 weeks is too much to me, man. Let's do this next week, people. If you're listening, we can make it happen. We can. And I just gave you the formula. Number one, get in the Discord. Number two, find 5 people that you know that you can also get into the Discord. Number 3, strap your boots on and get in the street and don't leave. Look at that fellow, and I can't pronounce his name, so you're going to help me. Ciaron.
Kieran.
Okay, Kieran. Okay, there we go. Now I know how to pronounce it finally. Kieran. The dude is fucking amazing, man. He won't leave the embassy. That's what we need. We need Occupy the motherfucking embassy. You know what I mean? You talk about Occupy ICE, the wonderful movement in the United States going on now with the ICE offices being occupied. Occupy those embassies. Every Ecuadorian embassy right now should have tents in front of it. Not just people. Go there and don't leave until they let him out. And they will let him out. And there'll be next week that they'll let him out because that shit is costly. Okay? And that's where you hit them. You hit them in their wallet. This whole thing is happening because of money. Okay? The Ecuadorian government has essentially been bought and paid for through this new president by the United States and the powers that be. They just imported last week more oil. The historic amount of Ecuadorian oil was imported last week, and more oil from Ecuador than ever before in previous history was exported last week. Money. The new military base, which me and Elizabeth talked about on my show, hadn't even happened yet. And yet we prophesied it, and a week later, there it is. WikiLeaks tweeting yesterday, there's a military base going in Ecuador. This is all about the money. But guess what? That little bit of money from that oil and from that base, that's nothing compared to the cost if we occupy 30 or so Ecuadorian embassies. And we surround them with tents and people and hippies taking baths in the streets and all of that was part of Occupy. Get in the streets and refuse to leave, and they will let him out of there because then it becomes not cost effective to keep him in there. And that's how almost any of these movements. That's how apartheid fell. It began to fall when they had the economic boycotts. So boycott Ecuador. Start boycotts against Ecuador, economic boycotts. But also, an Occupy is a form of sort of an economic assault because those kind of occupations and those kind of marches and protests can become very costly. So there are ways that we can make this happen and make it happen very, very quickly. I watched Occupy explode in a matter of 10 days from a movement of a bunch of people trying to dance around the bull, okay, to the point where 50 cities across America were in occupation. And I was at one of them in Oakland. One of the biggest ones there ever was in history was Occupy Oakland. Historic Occupy. That was my home Occupy. And that came in 10 days from the time of the start to the time we had 50 cities in occupation. So if that can happen that fast, that's the power of the internet. That's the power that we have in our hands right now through the honing of it, the weaponizing of it as Susie has done with Unity for J, where she's really honed it. Like I see what you've done is take that sort of weapon, that blunt weapon, and honed it sharp. So it's ready to go. And we don't need 8 weeks. This can happen in 8 days. Okay, we can have massive occupations in the streets. It's just a matter of doing it, making it happen, believing. The key thing is, in every mass movement I've been a part of, we all absolutely believed we were going to win. And we believed we were going to win fast. We didn't believe it was going to take forever to win. We believed we were going to win, and we're going to win now. And so it's that belief, that key belief, that will drive you. But then you got to do it. You got to do it, and you got to be willing to sacrifice. Like I said, man, quit your job. You can get another fucking job, okay? This is an unprecedented time to be a part of history. Think about it. This is a time to be a part of what Julian Assange is. This is a time to write your name into his story, okay? You know, you become part of the narrative. You become part of history. And history is going to write about us. Believe that. This is going to become huge, whether you become a part of it or not. So why not? Why not become a part of it and write your own name into the history books? But we can do this, I'm convinced, and we can do it fast. It's just a matter of having that will, that determination, and following that simple formula. I just told you the secret. It's very simple. Get in the Discord, find 5 people, and then put your boots on, get in the streets, and don't leave.
Okay, on that note, we have got to wrap because I need to hand over to Elizabeth and to our next guest. That was a phenomenal segment. Thank you so much. I'm really,
Thank
really
you for having me,
that you got
Susie. It was a
to
great
come
honor
on and have that conversation. Do you have any final message?
My message to the world is what I just spent 10 minutes saying, and I can only just say it again. You know, if you believe in Julian Assange, if you believe that he needs to be saved, then he needs to be saved now. If you are hearing that I have any kind of personal knowledge or relationship with Julian, I'm telling you, he's fucking dying. Okay, guys, he's dying. This man doesn't have long. This is an emergency. This is code red. And I believe that what Susie and her whole team have done is put together a way that it's easy for you. It's easy for you now to write your name into history and to become a part of this movement. And we can get him out of there. We can get him out of there fast. We can have him out of there in a week. And I've told you the formula. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to close with it. Get in that Discord server. Bring 5 people with you. And then get your ass in the streets. And we'll win. And we'll win fast.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Everybody, I'm going to see you again in, I think, about 7 hours or something. I have to check the schedule. Thank you so much for being here. This is...
Thank you for having me, Susie. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. This is certainly a historic moment and a historic movement. And I'm going to try and snatch a couple of hours sleep before I'm back with you guys. So next up, we're going to have a little musical interlude while we do our changeover. And then next up, you will be with Elizabeth Lee Voss, Editor-in-Chief of Disobedient Media. Thank you, everybody. And
Victory, man.
See you later.